Hello, welcome to my first actual wrap up of 2026. I almost said 2024 for some reason just now. I know what year it is, I swear. Today I just want to talk about some of the books that I read January through March, and I will probably go back and do an April wrap up in the future. Maybe I'll do April through June, but I really did want to talk about some of these books. It has been a really long time since I did like an actual wrap up, and I've been feeling very inspired to film. I am not going to talk about every single book. Some of them I already have talked about in the vlog that I just posted recently, so I'm not gonna go super in depth about those. And I'm also not going to get into individual volumes of manga. I'm just gonna talk about the series as a whole, and I'm probably not gonna talk about literally every single book that I've read, but I wanna make sure I talk about some of the highlights and also some of the low lights that I've had so far. So yes. First of all, I think I'm going to talk about some of the manga that I've been reading, so if you're not interested in that, you can skip ahead. I will put a little timestamp for you to skip to if you're not a manga person. Mainly, I have been reading so much Yona of the Dawn this year. It was recommended to me by one of my coworkers, and I have been so obsessed. The first couple volumes, it took me a little while to get into it, but at this point I think I'm on volume 29 and I can't stop reading it. I love it so much. I'm so invested in these characters. I believe there are 40 something volumes, so I'm getting pretty close to the end and I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm finally caught up. Yona of the Dawn is about a princess named Yona. Her father is the king. He is the ruler of this kingdom, and he is assassinated, and Yona has to go on the run with her bodyguard, and over the course of the series meets these 4 dragon warriors. And the series has romance, it has battles and politics, and it is just so good and interesting. If you're interested in manga at all, it is a really, really good series. I have loved it. Oh, also, I read the manga series, there's only 5 volumes, Lonely Castle in the Mirror got turned into a manga, and it is incredible. If you like the book Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Sujimura, I 100% recommend the manga. Even if you are not really a manga person, I think this could be a really good entry point into manga if you are a fan of that book and you want to get more into manga. It is incredible. So yes, love that. The first book that I read this year so far has been my favorite book of the year. Nothing has yet been able to beat it, and that is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. Alex E. Harrow is, I would say at this point, my favorite author. Everything she writes is just incredible. I love her writing style. I love how she writes her characters and her plots. This book is, first of all, absolutely stunning. It's just a masterpiece. I love it so much. A lot of Alex E. Harrow books center around storytelling, and that is one of my favorite things. I love books about storytelling and legends and like the way that stories are told and how that impacts their interpretations and stuff, and this sort of falls into that category as well. I didn't really actually know much about it going in other than that it was written by Alex E. Harrow, which is enough for me personally. Basically, in this story, there's the legend of Una Everlasting, who is a knight, and her story is sort of twisted and used as propaganda in some ways in this fantasy world. But then there is this scholar named Owen, and he has dedicated his life to studying the story of Una Everlasting. He is sort of trying to unravel the myths behind this tale and gets sent back in time to make sure that Una's story is seen through to the end. I don't think I'm doing this justice. Honestly, you should just read it. Like, it's so good. Then I read some books for the reading vlog that I just posted, so I'm just gonna list those. I read Little Fires Everywhere, Middle Game by Shannon Maguire, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, and Before the Devil Knows You're Here by Autumn Krause. So you can watch that if you want to hear my thoughts. And then I read The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This book is also probably a new favorite. I loved this so much. It's been a while since I've read a middle grade book, but I used to read them pretty frequently. I've always really found a lot of value in middle grade stories. I think there are lessons in here that we can still learn things from as adults. If you are someone who likes Studio Ghibli movies, and you want to read a cozy book that has Studio Ghibli vibes, this is the book for you. Like, when I was picturing this in my mind, I was like watching a movie with Studio Ghibli animation. Basically, it's about a witch who takes a baby and accidentally feeds the baby moonlight instead of starlight, and this gives the baby magical powers, and she gets raised by this witch lady. This is really good, and I loved it. Next book I want to talk about is Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill. I think I hauled this in my last video, and I read it shortly after that. This is a Frankenstein, not really a retelling, it's kind of like a sequel, sort of Frankenstein that follows his great niece. She is a scientist, but because she's a woman, no one takes her seriously, and her husband is kind of a douchebag, but she partners with him to bring about this— oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Yes, so her husband sucks. He wants to prove to everyone that he is a serious scientist, and his wife, who is smarter than him and who happens to be the great niece of Victor Frankenstein, is like, oh, I have a really great idea. I just found my great uncle's journals and I think that we could make a dinosaur. And there is a little teensy weensy little bit of queer romance in this. I loved this. This was 5 stars. If you like Frankenstein, if you like gothic books, if you liked Hungerstone, I think you'd probably like this a lot. The next thing I want to talk about is A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. So this is actually an official sequel to The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. It is authorized by the author's estate or something along those lines. I love The Haunting of Hill House, and I felt like this really captured the sort of the ominous vibe of that, and also like the tension and the mystery and feeling like you don't really know what's going on but you're still scared. This does have kind of a little bit of ambiguity going on, so if you are not a fan of that, you probably won't like this, but personally I loved it. Yes, it's also queer. Another plus for that one. Okay, next up is When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly. This book was so good. It was a little slow at first, and I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about it, but I wound up really loving it. It is a romance between this man and this merman, and it is very cute. I would check the trigger warnings because there's some stuff. Basically, merman is captured to be in a circus, and this boy, what is his name? Benny? Falls in love with him and is trying to help him. You could probably guess where it goes. But this has some really great found family vibes also. I really liked it a lot. It was really good. I think it's worth a read if you like queer romance and mermaids. Then I read Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. Magical realism, sort of witchy, but not really calling it that. It was very cozy, the perfect thing to read in the spring. It follows 2 women, and they are sisters, and one of them lives in this small town. She's lived there her whole life. She's living in her grandma's old house. She's kind of built this life around her, and she's very set in her ways. But her younger sister, who ran away when she was a lot younger, suddenly turns up with her young daughter, and it's about these sisters reconnecting and becoming involved in one another's lives again. I loved this so much. I'm such a sucker for books about sisterhood, and this absolutely fits the bill on that. Completely different direction. The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. This is a daylight horror. It is young adult, and it is about a young gender fluid person named Mars who his sister passes away, and he goes to the summer camp that his sister was going to try to figure out what happened to her and to possibly meet up with some of her old friends while she was there and see what the heck was going on, because he thinks she might have been involved in something sort of nefarious. The horror, definitely horror-ing, but it was also weirdly cozy in some parts. There's this sort of culty element to this group of girls, and honestly, I found myself wanting to be a part of it. I was like, yeah, you know, that is a cult I would probably join, being honest. Some gruesome moments. And I didn't love the ending, but I also don't know how else it could have ended, honestly, so I'm not mad about it. After that, I read Mayfly by CJ Lead. I did not know that this was an extreme horror, and this is an example of, I am very notorious for looking at the trigger warnings, thinking, you know what, I can handle it. And then possibly regretting that decision sometimes. There are a lot of people who like this book, and I understand why they like it, but it was definitely not for me. Hello. I am not a fan of violence just for the sake of violence. I've read some pretty, like, gory slashers, but this just went in a direction that I did not enjoy. There's a lot of sexual stuff that was very much not for me. I also don't think this book is as feminist as everybody says it is. I was definitely going into it expecting sort of good for her energy. Like, I read The Eyes Were the Best Part by Monica Kim last year, and I freaking loved that book. That book is about a girl eating eyeballs, so I kind of thought that I could handle this, but alas, she's eating eyeballs with a purpose. I actually really did like the first, like, 2/3 of the book. Her inner monologue was interesting. I liked the sort of direction that it was going, and then once it got to, like, this super over-the-top violent part, specifically, like, the sexual violence, I gave it 2 stars because there were things that I liked about it, but I would not recommend it, probably. I don't know. I just kind of wish that I had known a little bit more what I was getting into, and that is totally on me. It's not the book's fault. It just felt a little bit like trying to be edgy for the sake of being edgy. I thought it was sort of shaping up to have more depth than it wound up having. I did like the ending though, like the very ending. I was kind of like, yeah, like the final third of the book was very much not for me. Next, I read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This book gave me an existential crisis. I did really like it. I read it in a day because I couldn't put it down. It was sort of psychological torment, but in a good way. I don't know how to talk about this without giving things away. I feel like this is a book that you benefit from not really knowing much about it. So all I will tell you is that it is about 39 women who live underground and in a cage, essentially, and who are watched by guards. They don't know how they got there. They don't know what the world is like outside. It's just fascinating. It kind of reminded me of The Handmaid's Tale in the dystopian sort of vibes. Definitely be in the sort of headspace to be, like, depressed when you read this. Yeah. I followed that up with Gumshoe by Brenna Thumler. I love Brenna Thumler. If you have not read Sheets by Brenna Thumler, do yourself a favor and read Sheets. And this is her most recent, and it is phenomenal. Yes, so this is about Willa, and all she wants is to grow up and be a mail carrier. She is obsessed with the mail, and so she tries to write a letter to her mail person to be like, hey, you're super cool, thanks for doing what you do. But she gets anxious when she's putting it into his mailbox and takes it out of his mailbox. But he sees her taking it out of his mailbox and he's like, oh my gosh, that has to be Two Gum Tilly who's going around stealing people's mail. And so Willa has to go on the run because she's being hunted down because people think that she's Two Gum Tilly. And she meets up with this ragtag gang of girls who are junior mail carriers. And it is just so cute and sweet and fun. The colors are gorgeous. I love everything about this. It kind of has like a magical realism vibe, almost, in some parts. It's not really ever explained, but it just adds a little fun flavor to this story. Next, another 5-star book is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is my first Ashley Poston. Sometimes I think I'm not a romance person, but then I read a book like this and I'm like, okay, I take it back. I'm 100% a romance person, if it's the right kind of romance. This book is about a woman who is the ghostwriter for one of the most prolific, famous authors, romance authors. But the problem is that she has suffered a terrible breakup and she no longer believes in romance. And so she's the ghostwriter. She's been putting off writing this manuscript because she no longer believes in love. She gets a new editor and he will not extend her deadline any longer. Also, her father has passed away and she has to fly out and go to his funeral. It's a whole hot mess, and she is struggling. So she has to go back to her hometown that never understood her. Oh, also, she can see ghosts. So she's a ghostwriter who can see ghosts. I kind of left that part out. Surprise, surprise, she goes home to her father's funeral, and there's a knock at the door, and she opens it, and it is her editor. He has died. I already told you it's a romance book, so you can probably guess where it goes from there. I wasn't sure how a ghost-human romance was gonna work, but it was excellent. Talking about it again, I'm like, wait, was this my favorite book that I read this year? Okay, truly nothing can beat The Everlasting, but this is really so fun. I want to read more Ashley Poston books. It was like just the perfect right amount of cheesy and also had like a little bit of a spooky flavor. Give me that just little taste of creepiness. Makes me so happy. I love it. Next, Hester by Lori Lico Albanese. This book is kind of a Scarlet Letter retelling, sort of. So the author wrote this book as if it's following the life of the woman that Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter was based off of. So it's fictional, but it follows a fictional version of, if he wrote it about a specific woman, he wrote it about her, the main character in this book, whose name is not Hester. Her name is Isabel Gamble. But the whole concept is like, what if Hester was real? And so it's historical fiction. Nathaniel Hawthorne is a character in this book, and it basically follows Isabel, who's a young seamstress who is an immigrant to the United States. She comes from Scotland, and she's sort of trying to get her footing. Her husband is not great. We don't like him. Something really interesting about this book is that the main character has synesthesia, and it sort of talks about that through the lens of, like, at the time in history, they did not understand what synesthesia was, so it was almost seen as like a form of witchcraft. And being like Salem in the 1800s, you know, post-witch trials, but that is still contentious. So there's a lot of tension in this book. There's some romance. This is an example of a historical fiction book that I really did like. Almost like horror-y in a way, but mostly like the horrors of being a woman. Next book I want to mention is Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austen. After this, I only have one more Emily Austen book that I haven't read yet. I love her books so much. So every time I read one of her books and I'm like, oh my god, so relatable, I'm like, am I okay? This book is sort of mental health focused, follows our main character, who is named Enid. She's obsessed with space. She is very autism coded and maybe like OCD as well. I don't want to armchair diagnose this fictional character, but just from personal experience. The characters that Emily Austen writes are so layered and wonderful. Her writing is so funny, but still so deep, and it makes you feel so much. It is just, dare I say, like nearly perfect. Is this my favorite Emily Austen book? I don't know. It's very hard to choose. It might be my favorite. I loved it. Then I read Pew by Catherine Lacey. I'm so sorry. I thought it was okay. I'm so sorry. I know so many of my friends really, really love this book. I don't know what it was. It just like didn't really click with me. I think that if I had maybe grown up religious and had more of an understanding of that dynamic, it might have hit harder for me. Okay, so this whole story is based around a character named Pew, who is very ambiguous in terms of race, gender, pretty much everything. They are mute. And they awaken in this church and are taken in by this church community. And this whole community is sort of trying to take care of them, but also figure out what to do with them. And it becomes a very complicated thing. It's also leading up to what is called the festival, Forgiveness Festival or something like that, which is very ominous and foreboding throughout this book. The main thing that I sort of took away from it was that Pew as a character is sort of meant to act as a mirror for the characters in the book. They tell Pew their secrets, and Pew doesn't say anything, but people still seem to have sort of a takeaway from their reaction, sort of like bouncing off of them. And I think that the whole point of this book is that it's meant to act as a mirror for the readers as well, and sort of bring to light our prejudices. Like, as you read the book and you read people's reactions to Pew, you're kind of put in the position of thinking, oh, well, is that okay? Like, you sort of are meant to be thrown into those scenarios yourself, I think. After I read this, I was like, I want to understand. Like, I really want to understand. And so I read an interview where Catherine Lacey called it a fable without a moral. And I think that makes sense. Like, the moral of the story is kind of what you make of it. I'm not sure what I made of it. Like, some themes felt very heavy-handed, but it also felt very ambiguous at the same time. And I kind of just felt very confused and like I'm not sure what I'm supposed to feel. It might have been better to me if it was even shorter, because a lot of the dialogue and themes felt like they kind of repeated themselves a lot, especially towards the end of the book. Like I felt like the first 2/3 worked the best for me. Yeah, I do really like that it made me think. I love books that make me think, and I don't know how this book made me feel, which I think maybe plays into why it just didn't click as hard for me. But I massively respect everybody who loves this book. You are all so smart. I want to like feel what you feel when you read that book. Anyways, that's Pew. And then I read The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. A few years ago, probably like about a decade ago at this point, was really, really obsessed with Agatha Christie. And I started collecting a bunch of Agatha Christie books and reading them. This is her first Hercule Poirot book. And like, honestly, it was just fine. I fear that my Agatha Christie era may be no longer. I don't know. Maybe there are better ones? Drop your Agatha Christie faves in the comments, because I don't want to give up on her, but I was just kind of like, oops. I don't know. I know it's her first one in this series, so it probably like gets better and better. I think I've also just been reading a lot of like fun gothic queer mysteries, so then this I was like, where are the gay people? Hello? Even though, honestly, Hercule Poirot is a little bit queer-coded, I gotta say. This is a review from 2010 by someone named Joel, and it says, "Dear me, Poirot," I said with a sigh, "I think you have explained everything, and how wonderful of you to wait until page 230 to finally shed light on all your absurd behavior throughout the book, and to justify all the red herrings and narrative padding. But of course, it could only be so in the classic style of a fiendish murder mystery. Why, in fact, though this is but the first case we've solved together, I have no doubt we could do the exact same thing as many as 86 more times, depending on if you count the smaller cases." "Quite so, mon ami," Poirot chuckled. "You make such a reliably dim-witted Watson." I looked at Poirot in silent amazement. The colossal cheek of the little man. Then we drank some tea and he kissed me passionately on the mouth. And this person gave the book 2 stars. I gave it 4, but I feel the exact same way. Yeah. No further comment. Then I read Project Hail Mary, and let me tell you, this book is 100,000,000% worth the hype. I read it so I could go see the movie. Movie also 100% worth the hype. I'm having a bit of a Ryan Gosling era right now. I just kind of want to watch all of his movies. He just seems like a nice guy. I don't know. Everybody knows what this book is about at this point. I don't think there's any point in me telling you, but even the sciencey parts that I was really scared about were somehow still like accessible and not too confusing. And I just, I was annoyed that someone spoiled Rocky for me. I didn't know anything about this book, and then that was spoiled for me. So if you know what that means, just know that he is my 100% favorite character and I love him so much. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Just read this or go see the movie. I actually cried while reading this. If a book makes me cry, it is like automatically a 6-star book. And this is right up there. It is just phenomenal. I love hopeful science fiction. I love books where we're like, hey, shit is super duper fucked, but you know what? We're gonna try to figure it out. Especially with Project Hail Mary, the movie is doing so well, and Superman came out last year. That was also sort of a, maybe not science fiction, but like that movie's so hopeful, and just the power of people and human beings to do actual good and make positive change. I feel like we need that so bad right now. At least I do. And the fact that those kinds of messages are becoming so popular really just gives me a lot of hope also. Faith in humanity, kind of. I just desperately want everything to be okay. I experience so much anxiety about the state of the world and feeling like there's nothing I can do, and nothing I actually do will ever be enough. And stories like this just make me feel like a little tiny nugget of my soul is healing. So yeah, I loved it so much. The last book I want to talk about today is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This book is about Mika, who is a witch. People don't know that witches are real, but she makes social media videos where she's pretending to be a witch. And no one has ever caught on except this old man who I pictured as Ian McKellen the entire time. Sends her a message. on social media, and he's like, hey, I need a real witch to come to this house and help me teach these 3 little girls who are witches. Please help. But the thing is, in this world, witches are not supposed to spend a lot of time together because when so much magical power is in one place, things start happening and it can be disastrous. And so Mika goes to this house to figure out what she's gonna do. Let me just say, if you like found family, you will love this book. If you, like me, were a very big fan of The House on the Cerulean Sea, but then you found out about all the messed up stuff with TJ Klune, have complicated feelings about it because you really loved it at the time, you didn't pick up on the bad things, and then now you found out about the bad things and you're like, oh no, that's really bad, and now I can't unsee it, and I don't like that book anymore, but I still miss the feeling. Time to take my meds. Anyway, if you generally like the vibe of The House in the Cerulean Sea, I feel like you will like this one as well. And also the author is not problematic. Yay! Honestly, my only complaint is that it was almost too cute. This was like so sweet that there were times when I was like, too cute! Shriveling in the sun like a vampire. It was a little corny, but in a good way. Yes! That's all the books I wanted to talk to you about. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Yes, you win. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I hope you're having a great time. Hope you're having a great reading year. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for real.